Anything that comes from the soul is art.
I would like art to be back in our schools.
Higo abanma in higo mo abongto.
There's only 50,000 people in the entire county.
I actually didn't decide to take a class. My husband left me, basically, and I was devastated. And my sister decided, in her infinite wisdom, that I should take a pottery class, and that would make things better. The experience of working with clay and glaze and doing it in a community of women helped me in ways that I never anticipated, never. And it exposed to me a whole different side of myself, as well as giving me a sense of belonging. I think we have a very elevated view of what some things should be. And in the artistic realm, I think paintings in galleries and things that are far beyond us rather than within us are what we think of. And so we don't even aspire to artist. It just is like astronaut, you know? It's way far away. And most of us won't get there, when in fact, it's already inside us, and it's a matter of having it nurtured out of us.
Let me tell you something. What some people don't understand sometimes is a great coping mechanism to let your feelings out, to express more things. Because many times we think, oh, we have to be rich or very beautiful, where we see a painting or a scene, and it has to depict and show exactly what's there. But then when we have abstract art, where we can actually put our own colors and feelings into it, it expresses more. And sometimes we don't understand that's art. I was fortunate that my mother allowed us, when we were cooking, to make our designs. She showed us how to take the ketchup and the mustard and make a design. And we would have paints. She allowed us to put our hands in it and touch it. or go out to the beach and just draw something, or build a castle and decorate it with nature that was around. I didn't think it was that important. And as I grew up and saw other people's art, I was like, oh, I can do that. Maybe what I see in my mind doesn't get on the paper, but it's what I feel, and sometimes people see it too. Sometimes our schools are taking away the art classes. We still need this. We don't only need math, reading, science. These things are important, but science can also be found. Math can be found in art very much.
Glenstone is a post-war and contemporary art museum that really focuses on an art collection that really challenges your opinion on what art is, sort of setting the boundary of sort of surprising you with what you might see and how you might experience it. We're hoping to offer something different here at Glenstone. A lot of museums that you go into, there are crowds and there are people and they have their cell phones out and they're taking photos. And we wanted to really scale that back and create an experience where when you come here, you might feel like you're here alone. And you can spend as much time with the art as you want or as little time as you want. We are so lucky here that we get to say to artists, what do you want to do? Dream big. And we're able to give them the resources, the time, and in particular the space. We have about 300 acres that we're working with. Most museums don't have that luxury. I grew up in this area. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside Washington. So my folks were the type of parents that were always looking for free stuff to do. We didn't have a lot of money. So they would dump us at the Smithsonian like at least twice a month. So I grew up going to those museums and really taking advantage of the programming that they offered. And I knew I wanted to work in museums at a really young age, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do.
I was a survivor of a cult called Faith Assembly with a particular minister named Hobart Freeman. And during that time, from like age 11 to age 14, I suffered medical neglect and didn't get medical treatment for what I was suffering with, which was asthma. And I think I have my inhaler here. So this is proof. One of my brothers passed away. Our grandmother ended up taking us in, and during that period, I started finding my voice, started finding how I felt about things, how I was experiencing life, and the disappointments that I was going through. Songwriting gave me a voice, and I was able to start telling my story and experiencing or expressing what I was feeling through music. You know, when you grow up the way I grew up, people didn't talk about how we felt. We didn't talk about our feelings. We didn't talk about our emotions. We didn't talk about our disappointments or fears or hopes or even our dreams. We were really a very quiet family, and so there was not a lot of expression or a lot of affection. Even though I knew my parents loved me, I knew my brothers and sisters loved me, we weren't doing so well showing it. So part of finding that voice means, you know, I finally started speaking up for myself, started standing up for myself. I'm really glad that music gave me that ability and helped me find that. When I started turning 13, 14, 15, the music really gave me the ability to escape. To me, the art is just, it's the individual way that they find the way to express themselves.
I've always been a songwriter since I'm probably 6 years old. I started writing songs. I grew up in a musical household and everybody was always playing something, and I didn't take music lessons, so I taught myself. Not knowing other songs, I just made up my own songs. So the first songs I played were like stuff I just made up. A lot of times I like to write when I first wake up in the morning before you're like fully awake. You know, you just kind of, sometimes I wake up with an idea in my head. Anything that comes from the soul is art. Music and art, it all comes from your soul. It's like any creative thing that you're creating out of nothing. There's a blank canvas, or there's no song in the room, and all of a sudden there's a song in the room, or you know, art on the canvas. It's all the same, really. You're just creating something from nothing, from a place in your heart. And that's just the coolest thing in the world, I think. If someone really wants to do it, you can't talk them out of it. That's the thing. It's like, and you have to want it that bad. If you want to do something in music, you can't be talked out of it, you know. And sometimes I guess maybe that's foolish. You know, there's a lot of people doing it that have no business doing it full time or whatever, and it's very hard even for pro writers these days to get people to record their songs. The music business isn't what it used to be. But I would just say, go follow your heart and do, you know, you have to want to do it just for doing it anyway. It's not about making money with it, really. You got to really want to write songs, and I would do it whether or not.
Hope you can see, man, I'm trying to be someone.
Most music is made by vibrations. So in other words, on a piano, if you're playing piano inside, there's the hammers that are hitting the strings vibrate. If you were analyzing a trumpet and you started out on a trumpet, the sound starts out here with the vibration here, which goes into here, which goes into here, which makes the sound. So you go from here And what do I do for a living is I make my living in the music business, which means that I produce festivals and work in the studios playing trumpet, which is my main instrument, and go out on the road with different artists such as Kenny Chesney or Delbert McClinton or Leonard Skinner, and go out and play shows throughout the country doing that. You know, what I try to do with kids when I'm working with kids is turn them on to music and turn them on to the arts. You know, I try to teach them, since I'm teaching them trumpet, I try to teach them about any kind of trumpet that they want to know, whether it be rock and roll, whether it be jazz, whether it be classical. You know, we get down the basics so that they know what to do and how to make sound out of it and get it down and be able to play in their school band. But also develop an overall love for music, because a lot of these kids aren't going to be professional musicians. You know, 99 out of 100 of them aren't going to be professional musicians, just like the kid playing basketball down the street is not going to be in the NBA, but he's still getting a lot out of it. And that's one of the things we're trying to also teach kids, is not to just become great musicians and great artists, but to become fans of music.
pictures since I was teething. I'll be worth $1 million soon as I stop breathing. You're my man.
As a mid-sized regional museum, we're really eager to bring the world of art and have our community very knowledgeable about the world of art in Wichita, Kansas. We are a museum devoted to American art. We have over 10,000 wonderful works in our collection.
The first artwork that came into the collection of the Wichita Art Museum is John Stuart Curry's Kansas Cornfield. It was purchased in New York from a gallery there. John Stuart Curry is a Kansas artist. This is an iconic Kansas image. I grew up in a large family that traveled all the time. I lived in Europe for 3 times before I graduated from high school. My father was an English professor, and all of that had a profound impact on me. So I was having really mind-transforming art experiences from early days, and it was when I was in college and living in Vienna that I determined that I loved being in art museums so much, I was going to craft a life in art museums. The representative who was helping us acquire the collection was in New York, and Edward Hopper was at the top of his game at that point. We are so very blessed to have 4 Edward Hoppers in our collection.
A mural is something that is painted directly onto a wall.
The public function of a mural is creating a story to unite the community. So like the mural behind us is a way to tell the story of who Wichita is, who Kansas is, and explain some of our history that unites the people here together.
You know, we get a lot of simplified forms and shapes in our pieces. So we try and keep it, simple, straightforward, to the point, something that, like any good typography, just catches you right off the bat. It's something that you don't have to fight for to see the meaning. But and it could take you to deeper levels if you spent some time with it too.
I do view it as our responsibility to help those that don't have as strong of a voice in the community at large. I think there are some communities here that don't have as many opportunities, so part of our responsibility is giving voice or shining a light on some of those artists that maybe don't have as many chances. Hopefully we can bridge gaps in the community by recognizing each other's voices. I really enjoy this piece for making art even more accessible to those communities. By bringing the pieces from the museums out into public art, it eliminates that distance between people and the museum.
This painting is my favorite in the whole show because there's a lot of textures and movement that's happening. There's a lot of colors that are unexpected. I'm an emotional person, and so I'm looking for something that makes me linger and look a little bit longer than I normally would, and to me that makes a successful piece. So when I'm going to new shows at museums or galleries, then I'm looking for something that just makes me go, oh, and I usually it's some kind of connection. There's something personal. So with this piece, I'm an outdoors type of person. I grew up in north central Kansas, and I just love being outside, so this gives me that feeling of being by myself.
I think art is such a personal thing, and that you can find beauty in so many ways, and so I think it's what makes a community unique, what makes it vibrant, and it plays a huge part in my life. So I'm thrilled to be able to live in Wichita where we have an abundance of art offerings for everybody. Our Keeper of the Plains, which is iconic for Wichita, it's our own Statue of Liberty.
To the Indians, the East is where knowledge, this days start. So the East is very spiritual. So everything relative to the Indian cultures, all of them. Teepees, mainly the teepees, never erect a teepee, it's always to the east. That's where the day starts, the sun rises, and so everything starts from the east. And this in here, we face him to the west. The day's gone. So now he's facing the west. The day's completed, he finished his journey to the west. So anybody who is cognizant of that starts the days every day, say a prayer to the great Creator, and that's a gesture that he's in right there as a prayer gesture, and it's prayer to the great Creator. I'm a 3/4 Kiowa and 1/4 Apache, and my whole life has been here in Wichita. Though my parents came here when I was about 3 years old and never left. Been here. Wichita's been my home. Wichita treated the Indians quite well. There's 70 different tribes represented by 70 different flags right here. But they have one thing in common, the great Creator. Anywhere you look at it, anywhere you peel that beliefs down, in the middle, there's a great Creator. He's still there. He'll always be there. When you bid farewell to somebody in the non-Indian world, you just tell them goodbye. Well, in the Indian world, there's no such thing as a goodbye. You say, Hego abanma and Hegomo abongdo. It means I'm going now and I'll see you again.
Most of the people that live here work outside of town. A lot of people work in Hutchinson, Wichita, McPherson. A lot of them even drive to McPherson or Salina. Usually our daytime, a lot of the traffic is just local farmers that have to come into town for fuel or to eat at the restaurant or get their mail. And I try to offer kids classes that it's inexpensive enough that all I'm doing is I'm not making anything. I'm covering the canvas and the paints, and they come in and they do have that opportunity to create something. I would like art to be back in our schools. Like I said, it's been almost a decade since we've had that. I know the grade school teachers, they try to incorporate something every month pretty much into their curriculum, but we don't have art. And I know that it's not in our budget.
I teach art at McPherson Middle School. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. When we get them as 6th graders, especially at the beginning of the year, they're still just kids, you know, and about halfway through the year, then they turn into middle schoolers. Their attitude towards art becomes better because they see success and they want to keep going with that. And they just find a place where they're comfortable and they can make choices of their own. I think the most important thing about learning art is that you learn to make decisions. You learn to be yourself. And I think that's a really important thing to do in school-age kids because all day you're trying to be like your peers. You are trying to get the right answer on tests. You are trying to do things right. And I think when you come here, there's room for exploring what you want and what's right for you instead of what's right for everyone else. I think that success in art is hard to measure, and it's hard to sell that as success. Budgets get tight. It's just one of those things that is an extra.
There weren't very many opportunities for students to take part in music or the arts after school here in McPherson. And so we felt like that was the best place for us to use our building, to use our skills, to use our interests to be able to create an after-school program for students that age. But we wanted to create a space where they could be in a safe environment to continue to grow in a particular skill that they wanted to work. Is the arts is you're kind of sharing a part of yourself when you put yourself out there. It's a risk that you're kind of exposing yourself. I know that for anybody who does performance art, you're kind of putting yourself out there in a vulnerable situation.
I'm Sean Yates. I'm 14. I'm a freshman in high school, and I like music and arts and stuff. So I feel like I'm lost in music. I love it. I mean, it's just great. It's a great escape for me from just normal life and stuff. Staying up till like sometimes 1 in the morning doing homework and stuff. I feel like I can get overworked and depressed and feel like I can't do it, but I pick up a guitar and I immediately forget all my worries and stuff.
If they have a passion to pursue that, anyone can call themselves an artist.
Well, I technically am a professor, but it's a lot more fun than it sounds. I teach sheet metal and I teach the history of automotive design. Well, they learn all the different processes that a person needs to restore an antique automobile. So that would involve all the different mechanical processes, as well as things like paint and soft trim and sheet metal shaping and woodworking. It's a very comprehensive program. I think of it as a compulsion for us who do this kind of work, and that could be because you want to fix something or heal something. We're looking at these objects as these really important artifacts, and it's very satisfying to be able to basically heal this object. But there's also creativity involved. If you're the one sewing the seat or shaping the metal, it's definitely like traditional art in that sense, where there's a lot of craftsmanship involved. The art comes from the drive of the people doing the work. It's like a tribute to the craftsmanship of the people who made it the first time. With the cars that were handmade cars, you're basically walking in their footsteps, recreating, like with the rolls, the exact same processes, using the same tools that they did to make this thing beautiful.
This room houses the USD 418 art collection. It was at one time the second largest art collection for a school district in the United States. It started in 1911, and it was collected by students They would save their pennies and nickels and dimes and would buy art for the school district. And there was a gentleman here in town named Carl Smalley who actually worked for his father's seed company. And even though he was supposed to be working selling seeds for his father, he really was a patron of the arts. And so he talked his father into letting him have a small corner of the seed store, and Carl put some prints and some books and some little pieces of pottery and so forth, and started selling art from his father's seed store. Eventually this grew into his own store, and at one time it was said that McPherson had more art per capita than New York or Los Angeles.
Yesterday I noticed that when we were out on the prairie, it had rained. You can smell the grasses. Maxwell Wildlife Refuge is a home for a very large bison herd, and those two are our main attraction of the refuge. Sits on 2,800 acres of native prairie. There's art in just about everything. There's seed pods on our plants out here. The close-ups, you can't maybe tell that it's a seed pod off of a piece of grass. But it's beautiful. When there's a lot of dew and moisture, I have seen webs that have been made in the grass that is so artistic. Yeah, I mean, really, it is a big painting.
Welcome to TikTok Budlow. What we do at TikTok is we are an anti-cafe, which is a pay-per-minute social space. And what we do is we check people in, and from that point, they pay 8 cents per person per minute, and everything else is free. So the coffee is really incidental. We say, pay-per-minute coffee shop because anti-cafe is not a word. We have art in here because this is intrinsically a creative space. Whether that creativity is writing, whether it's building your own business, whether it's actually doing physical art, we're a creative space. I think that fear is a really big kind of demotivator, both in terms of the making art, like I was talking about with myself, and that fear of I'm not going to be any good at this, but also fear of kind of looking at your own motivations, looking internally, because art makes us look internally, and not wanting to confront anything about yourself. In any sort of world that wants you to conform, that wants you to be the same as every single other person, do the same as every single other person, anything artistic at all is an act of rebellion.
I love this piece. It says, I am a follower of rude people. Many people have no clue what outsider art is. They've never been exposed to it before. Many people, when they consider art, they consider, as I said, our beautiful Western collection, Western landscapes, much more mainstream art. This is a completely new experience for many people. People can walk in here and say, oh, my 4-year-old could do this. But that's not the point. Yes, your 4-year-old can do this. Everybody can do this. Everybody can explore their creative side, create something that, yeah, it's not for anyone else. It's just for the artist creating it. An outsider artist is someone who is not formally educated in art. And it's more of a passion. It's something they need to do. It's something that they are compelled to create. It's something within themselves. I think all art has its place. It does. I mean, it's all expression. It's all creating.
Everybody that walks by anywhere in the world, everything around you is art. You know, everything from architecture to advertisements to the design of cars to, you know, anything. Everything in our society revolves around design. I'm a silkscreen poster artist. I'm a pretty focal person, so you know, for instance, when I was playing in the band, that was my focus. I really didn't do anything else outside of that until I kind of got into the artwork side. And nowadays, kind of similarly, I only focus on artwork. I really don't do anything else outside of this, just because I like to put my whole heart into what I'm doing. And so anybody who finds something they love to do creatively and pursues it wholeheartedly, you know, and it could be anything, whatever you choose, as long as you do it with everything you have. I think there's a lot of people who have the ability to create wonderful things, but they're not willing to take the chance to pursue that to the end, you know. I think a lot of society is going to try and keep you from doing that. You know, again, back with financial reasons and family reasons and lots of different stuff. So yeah, I think it's very against creatives, but at the same time, I think it's important for creatives to dig their own hole and make their own place, not to be deterred by any exterior circumstance. I think art is the most integral part of life.
This is my gallery, the John Doe Art Gallery. I represent about 25 local artists. I try to tell artists it's not so much talent that's important, but perseverance. You know, the more stubborn you are about it, the more successful you may be. You know, sometimes it's a struggle for all artists, but it's quite rewarding too. You know, I can't imagine not having art on my walls or in my life. You know, I think people that don't have it are really missing out on something, but they don't know they're missing out.
From 1980 till really about 5 years ago, so several decades, this 250,000 square feet meatpacking plant was abandoned. Art has been used prolifically throughout generations here in Pueblo, especially when you look at tagging, graffiti art, mural art. You look at large self-expression works. The Pueblo Levee is in the Guinness World Record book as the longest continuous mural in the world. So we have this tradition of self-expression in a lot of different formats. So Water Tower Place is iconic in a lot of different ways. One, it's imposing because it is 250,000 square feet adjacent to I-25 to the interstate here, with 2 million bricks in a very gorgeous kind of mid-century modern design. And the water towers are iconic because you can see them from the north, from the south, from the east, and from the west. But it's iconic in the sense that we have this actual physical, meatpacking plant that represents one of the great industries that brought, fortune to this community. But now, because of its design, it's iconic in the sense that it allows us to be really thoughtful in the way that we create very meaningful spaces for artists, for creatives, for makers to actually do what it is that they do best.
I'd passed on when you came and took care of things around this town here, so it must have been real exciting for you, though.
Oh my goodness, it was. Again, if my mother ever knew some of the things I got into. I am Mrs. Eleanor Malaby. I came to Glenwood Springs in May of 1885, a new bride from Columbus, Ohio.
As Jasper Ward, I was born in 1850 in Franklin County, Illinois. My brothers and I, my mother and my sisters came west after the Civil War when our farm was burned.
This specific character, Mrs. Eleanor Malaby, is fourth generation. Her great-granddaughter happened to have her handwritten, Eleanor's handwritten memories. Got to meet her great-granddaughter, and she could hand me down the oral history of her family to know who this woman was. People don't have the whole story. We're trying to give the background, the everyday feelings that these people had, we have today. We shared the mistakes that were made. Perhaps we can help make it better for the next generation.
Jasper represents that part of the West that the story has really not been fully told yet. My job is to keep history alive, and Glenwood Springs has a very rich history. So it's not a difficult job at all. And part of that is portraying, as a portrayalist, a character that I can identify with that's part of the history of this area. We're right at a verge here in Glenwood Springs of losing our soul. And what made this a community is the history that tied it together. When you're tied to an electronic device that you become not addicted, may not be the word, but if you become dependent upon, if you can get them away from that back to just free time for the imagination to run wild, the arts then bring that alive. And we lose that. You lose the soul of who you are as a culture, as a town, as a country.
Some people will say, like with fine art, what do I do with this? Or, you know, it doesn't have a purpose. And I always say, well, I really don't need my art to be functional, but I love my functional items to be art. So I like everything, and I feel like everything is, oh, you're just blessed if you're an artist, you know, in every way, and everything comes from creativity, problem solving, enrichment, enjoyment, you know. I think everybody is an artist. I really do think you are, you know. Yes, I don't think it has to be one thing. And sometimes I'll meet artists who are really talented, but they don't have like the business aspect of it. And I try to explain, if you're not just really passionate about it, and it's everything and you have to do it, don't do it as a business, just do it for joy.
We specialize in making these barrel-aged sour beers, and so that is really my favorite, one of the only forms of art expression that I do is the blending aspect. So the best part of my job is when we're able to start tasting barrels and seeing what flavors we get and what happens when we add those 2 or 3 or 4 barrels together. So that the idea of the blending process is that 1 + 1 = 3. We're trying to create a blend that's greater than the sum of its parts. We could compare the blending process of what we do to make these beers with painting. So we try to create as many different flavors as we can, kind of the same way that a painter might want to have a lot of different colors to use what they're trying to do. So that's kind of how we describe it, is we want to have tons of different flavors in the barrels so that we're not limited by what we can achieve with that blending process. Similar to, I would assume, how a painter wants to have as many different colors as they can get to make what they're trying to do. What is an artist for me? I'm somebody that works with their hands, somebody that creates something that the average, from ingredients that the average person wouldn't be able to make something to that level of skill. It's easy to not, if you don't understand something, to have a negative view of it, but the more you begin to understand a product or a process, the more you'll be able to see that there is definitely a lot of art that goes into what we do here.
In northeastern Nevada, where we live, there's only 50,000 people in the entire county. The towns are far spread apart. Many people think 50 miles outside of the Great Basin is an overnight trip. But 50 miles in northeastern Nevada is what you do with a 6-year-old kindergartner to go one way in a school bus to go to school 5 days a week. And we think nothing of it. It's just the way we live. And we don't regard this as unusual because you're never a good tourist in your own backyard. And you don't realize that this is unique. It's just the way we are and the way we live, and we're fine with it. The heritage of cowboy culture is one that embraces the old traditional ways. Our cowboys still go out on the range on horseback, and they camp out in cowboy teepee tents just like their predecessors did 170 years ago. It really hasn't changed, but yet the ranchers nowadays have different ways of tracking their livestock. They keep computer records. They have cell phones, although cell service is a little sketchy in places around here. But cowboys love to embrace those traditions that have gone on for 150 years.
Para comenzar a hacer la montura, tengo que cortar lo que es un pedazo de lámina primero para ponerla aquí por debajo. Entonces se ponen 3 piezas de piel encima de la lámina, rebajándola hasta que queda bien para que no le moleste a la persona que va a montar. Se necesita varios años para poder aprender a hacer este tipo de trabajo. No hay muchas personas que lo hacen ahorita en este tiempo. No sé por qué razón será, pero hay muchas personas que ya no les gusta trabajar mucho. Mi papá era era zapatero, por decirlo así. Él era zapatero en México, zapatos de mujer, o sea, toda clase de zapatos. Entonces a lo mejor ya traía yo ¿cómo lo podría decir? La tradición o algo de él. Y pues ya empezamos, inclusive todos mis hermanos trabajamos en piel. Tengo varios hermanos en Guadalajara y ellos también hacen monturas y toda clase de trabajos en piel. La parte del arte, vamos a decir que es todo lo del trabajo, pero el arte, yo pienso que es el hacer todo este diseño de flores. Algunos montureros las hacen diferentes, ¿verdad? Yo pienso que el hacer el diseño de las flores y trabajarlas, yo creo que ese es el arte.
I am a first-generation Basque American. So the Basque people, in the time of the war back in Spain and France actually, were very repressed. And that repression led to a lot of families having to immigrate to other countries for survival, really. And so Nevada became a hub of many of the Basques because they came here as sheep herders. And so that immigration started in the 30s and really became even more prominent in the 60s, the early 60s. The things that we are trying to preserve most are dance, the tree carvings. So if you go to any of the mountain areas in northeastern Nevada, you'll see these tree carvings. And the tree carvings can be anything from how they felt about politics at the time to like their love for their homeland and them missing their families back home that they love to what life was like out in the open. My mom didn't know English when she went to school, and my dad never went to school in America, but their goal was that we knew English. And so it's very typical, you know, the Basque language was almost lost because of this story right here. They so wanted their children to be able to integrate into American culture. So happy to have the opportunity here that that Basque language was almost lost here.
I like mechanisms. I like seeing the way things move and the way they work, and I always have. Since I was a little kid, I wanted to be an inventor, and I've kind of incorporated that into my art with the kinetic art aspect of it, where my sculptures actually do move and do things. I'm inspired a lot by the mechanics of machinery and the mechanics of nature and how we can put those together to make weird mechanical robot animals and whatnot. Everyone has their own opinion on what is and is not art.
When I first started working at a foundry, I didn't know much about art. I mean, I just needed a job, right? I'm 19 years old, I needed a job. I ended up being good at it. And the longer I worked at a foundry, then I got exposed to different types of art, you know, anything from, you know, regular wildlife type art, you know, realistic figures. The second foundry I worked at did more contemporary work, and that was my first exposure to contemporary artwork, which is quite different, and it took me a little while to understand it more, talk with the artist, ask them questions, and it was a real learning experience. When the cup's full, he'll just move on to the next one. No excitement, guys. Artwork can be a lot of different things. I mean, it might be somebody painting a mural on a wall. It might be, you know, like some of the old buildings, they have an old billboard on there, and we, you know, in Baker, that it's important. We keep that stuff, you know. I mean, it's for people to see. You know, I know that it comes at an expense, and so you have to weigh, you know, is the expense of the art worth the return? And so what's the return? Is the return people spending money here? I don't know. I mean, the return might just be the fact that people are pleased and they like to see it, you know? So, and maybe they come back again because they enjoyed the experience.
Welcome to Churchill
Americart.
School.
Yeah, come on in. We saw a big sort of shift in the community into believing that arts had a place in a rural economy. We had seen an artist that was in the Catskills that had an old elementary school as his home and his studio, and we thought that would be a really cool thing for a place like Baker.
So, I mean, we're really not motivated by making a lot of money, but we're motivated to make sure that we pay our bills here. So we're trying to make sure that, you know, that happens. But we are always super excited to have artists producing artwork here. My background is in the fashion industry, so I did hair and makeup. Well, first started out as owning a couple salons in Chicago, and then moved to New York, and I did hair and makeup for pretty much every magazine.
So when living in Chicago, I used to produce and direct a live music show that was part of cable access. We have artists in virtually every space. When you're able to do something that's a creative outlet, it helps you deal with whatever issues you might be having internally. The arts sometimes give you the opportunity, when you're not feeling good, to express yourself in a way that's constructive versus destructive, and be able to provide spaces and be in a place where creativity is sort of championed and celebrated. Like, that's an important thing.
All right, give a $100 bill for him, give him $100. I got 100 now, 25, 125.
I'm known in Baker for the Salt Lake auction. We auction off salt licks as art, and I've been doing this for 13 years. It's a charity event for Parkinson's, which I got 19 years ago. And I just wanted to do something for the disease. 50-pound blocks of salt, and the deer sculpted it with their tongues. And it really looked, it's just very attractive. It had just very nice lines to it. We started auctioning off the blocks. The first one went for like $125. And I thought, boy, this is gonna fly. And at the end of the night, we had like 40 people in there, and we raised $3,500. It's never gone down. And we're up to like $140,000 now. And you kind of think that's a spit in the ocean. It's a small amount comparatively, but when you think of there's 16,000 people in the county and 80,000 cows, you know, well, they participate too. We have to have the cows.
Contemporary art, it does test the limits for some people's tolerances. I mean, as Whit was saying, the two pieces of metal, you know, kind of a minimalist piece. You know, people wonder why that would be considered art. I think that there are kind of two different levels. I think that there's a kind of an intellectual level, and there's almost a body response to forms. It's like a body response to a beautiful sunset. You don't have to be, you don't have to know about great painters doing sunsets or any of that other stuff. All you have to do is be in front of it and feel a certain way, and that is art. It's not the intellectual art, it's not the historian's art, it's not that. And then we have stacks and stacks of books about those things that give reasons why those two sheets of metal are so profound. And Baker City actually here has turned the corner into a very artistic town, very art center. It's amazing to me how much energy is in town for the arts now. And when I was a kid and lived here and went to school here, it wasn't so. You know, there was a certain style. You did the mountain to look like the mountain, and you didn't mess with it. And if you did, you're doing something wrong.
What I love about clay is it is a very tactile medium. It's also very forgiving. It's been a frustrating journey because I've had a lot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that also has been very good for me because it's nice not to learn to live with not always being in control.
And that's probably what I like most about art is just the process of creating. Once I have it conceived in my mind, then it's just a matter of executing it and dealing with the material and how the material is going to react to what I want it to do.
Art is so many things. It's so many things to so many different people. But for me, as an educator, I think it's all about being able to communicate and express yourself in a unique and individual way with no right or wrong answers. You get to art measures I think it measures our culture. It communicates to those around us, and it does so, and lots of times there are things that we know that we can communicate with art, but we can't express it verbally, but we can express it in music, we can express it in theater, we can express it visually, and that's what art is. I don't think art will ever go away. I think we need it as a culture. I think we need it as individual people. So many of the things in school today say there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And I think we need to, particularly rural communities, your education is the key, and we have to have it in our public schools to help children learn to think that way. And not learn to think that way, but be allowed to be creative.
I've been looking for majestic all my wandering days, searching God's creation for the answer to prayers I pray.
Art makes an impression.
Trying to see the simple beauty, looking for majestic, seems like all my years.
I always say that arts is a way you package a city. It's the way that you bring personality. It's the way that you bring passion. So this council has been incredibly supportive of making sure that we are really infusing art in the city of Reno. And I think that was something that was missed for a very long time. Whether it's planning infrastructure within streets, right, or within buildings. And so we always like to, as a council, ask those developers, where do you see arts and culture fitting into this project? And so we start to educate them why arts and culture are so important, not only for economic development, but for bringing a community together. If you can imagine a building that has no personality, no arts and culture embedded in it, it doesn't really take on any life of its own. And it really sort of, I say, it doesn't have a soul. So we want to bring sort of the soul and personality and passion into those projects. And we believe that that comes through art. I think more than ever, public art is critical. Remember, it brings communities together. There's many times I can walk outside to the Believe sign or to the Whale, and there'll be people gathered around it, taking pictures, talking about it. And I think that is important when it comes to public art. And it's something that you can give back to your entire community if you plan it correctly. And that's another thing that I love about art politically. We don't see it becoming a Democratic or Republican issue. We see it, something that we can all come together on and support one another on. And so I think art also plays a very big role politically.
I had been here for about 10 or 12 years with a business, and I noticed that there was starting to be an influx of new young professionals coming over from California with the higher taxes, and we've got Tesla and Switch and Google, and I could see that there was a rebirth coming, and I decided I wanted to participate. Art gives people a new way to look at their downtown. The area that we're in was a very difficult area with a lot of problems. And so people kind of looked at the western half of downtown Reno as an area they didn't want to visit, they didn't want to have anything to do with. It was a doormat, so to speak, and art enlivens the soul, and it gets people excited and interested and activated, and all the above is what it's helping to bring to downtown Reno. When we started putting art up on 4th Street, when this art came about, people were looking at it. They didn't understand what I was doing, but within a couple of days, selfies are coming out, and they're making that art part of their life. They're interacting with that art, and art enlivens the soul, and folks are enjoying it. Well, it's going to be a 30-year overnight success story. It's not going to happen overnight, but we did this in Cleveland as well, and so we think it gives people a chance to look at their life and their community a little differently, a little more uplifting.
Public art is a specific idea or concept, so I think it depends on what role it's playing in its community, if it's meant to be, a social dialogue, if it's meant to be a pop-up exhibit to give excitement or life to a community. So you have to kind of understand the integrity behind the piece before, so I guess it's more about the idea than it is about the specific piece. With my own personal public art, I wanted to share my voice and also share that I wanted to be a part of the community and share, that expression or that joy that art can give. I think it's very inspiring to see a community, and not just the arts community, but to see the community, the neighborhoods be so accepting of a little bit more color or a little bit more dialogue through the visual aspect. I do think that murals, sometimes it's this, I don't know, it's like a fine line, like what is it exactly? Is it a commissioned billboard, or is it a tag where an artist is expressing maybe a political or social view, which is where murals kind of started from.
I was born in Philippines,
and I grew up in Stockton, but now I've been here in Reno for about 25 years. There's no employment where I came from. Came in when it was around 1990s. We need more artists, and we need to try to give them more benefits, because I know art is not really a month-to-month income, but we need to encourage the young generation to express through art. And you can make money of it, but I know it might take a while. New generation nowadays, they're so busy with their phones or gadgets and all that, but I think we need to put our cell phone down or any gadgets down and just go out on a weekend and just go to the museum. I think that's what we lack of is time.
When I started when I was 8, I had a Paiute buckskin dress that was handed down, made by my great-grandmother. So buckskin is the hide of a deer. And at the time, I thought I was the most boringest thing. There's no shiny on there. The beads were like basic colors, red, green, no shine. And then I would see some other girls dancing with their fancy shawls or their jingle dresses, and I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. But in my family, handed down my family heirloom was not that. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm stuck dancing this then. I used to watch MTV as much as I could. I would watch Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Paula Abdul. I was a big MC Hammer fan. That was my first concert I went to. So we had no more outfits, and so I kind of threw myself into watching those entertainers all the time. Like kind of go into our soul and just Then I came back to my culture after having been classically music trained. After doing classical music so long, it wasn't fulfilling me anymore. Going into other countries or even on reservations where they've had a lot of suicide or things like that, we would use these dances somewhat in a modern way because it's a healing dance, and I'd still wear the dress, whether it's plain or really just decorative. The purpose behind the dance is for healing at that moment.
Been looking for majestic rose among the thorns, in the sunrise, in the canyon, in the thunder before the storm, in the cathedral of a mountain ridge, where the wind and trees unite, looking for majestic, searching all my life.
Love was part of the first show that the Boyd Foundation arranged for us. There were 80 weddings that occurred in the letters of love. Artists are a unique group of people on the planet. 99% are wonderful, decent, intelligent, very capable, and very progressive in their thinking. The most important quality of art is to please our species, and whatever does that is good art. If it's dancing, if it's writing, it's whatever. Those forms are most successful when many, many people enjoy them. And the famous artists and the non-famous artists are equally skilled, in my opinion. Well, we've been having a sculpture garden for 23 years, and we mostly have local artists. Some are from a little bit further away, and most of them are local artists that I got to meet and invite to show in our garden.
I believe artwork is something that should be interacted with. When we're children, we're raised to sort of stand back from art and look at it in a museum, and we're not really encouraged to really interact with art, and it gives them a different idea of what art means to them. It's not something that's removed from you, but it's a part of you, and I think that that's really the essence of what art is here in the Sculpture Grove and hopefully in other places around the world.
Food is an art form. Obviously, taste is another sense that you want to, is important. And more, food is more than taste. It's appearance and smell. All of those things go to make food obviously an art form, for sure.
I think, the job of most art is to create almost like a language, whatever it is, and I don't know. I think, like for at least for me, I'm trying to say something through my art, and if you end up kind of pulling that out of me, hopefully that adds to the artwork. But sometimes, like with art, there's I always think of art and its reaction similar to like a relationship, in that sometimes people have like this instant mutual kind of spark or attraction, and they kind of get together and then it builds from there. So like the more you learn about the piece or the person, the more you fall in love with it.
Art just always kind of held my interest. I ended up moving a lot as a child. I was born in Miami, then moved to Canada, then we were in Oklahoma, then Nicaragua, then here. And so just moving around a lot, I always had art to just kind of hold my interest instead of it was just something that I always kind of felt safe with and at home with.
I think there's an easy mental exercise you could play where you just say, how would the world look if you eliminated artists? It's hard to explain why the world would need art, but if you think about how it would look when you remove it, I think that's an easier argument to kind of convince people of how important it is.
Well, I started out in LA as a very traditional black and white photographer, and for decades loved working in a darkroom, and only fairly recently made the transition to digital. So definitely there's a lot of emotion in my work. I bring my own intention to the work, but I also know that any viewer, any visitor is going to bring their own baggage with them, their own perspective, their own emotions. So I leave it open to the viewer. Some people would say no, but I know some of my work has been social issue oriented, and I absolutely believe that it can be art and it can have political statements, but I also always want to leave room for people to bring, the viewer to bring what they want to bring to it.
I came from Mexico about 6 years ago, and I started working here in this barbershop about a year ago. When I started going to college, I wanted to become an artist, an animator artist, doing more stories and drawings at the same time, making books, because I like to write too. Barber actually changed my mind totally. Now my dream is as a barber, as an artist barber. Most of the barbers nowadays is just they just want to cut hair and get money. But this, for me, is more like a passion. I do it because I like it. I didn't even expect the money at the beginning. I was just like, I just wanted to become like good, my best version, pretty much. And then I've been like practicing every time. I've been staying pretty late, waking up early, and then I've been practicing a lot. No, not everybody can be an artist. I think it's a passion. You gotta feel it. It's not something like you just want to do art and then start doing it. I feel like they need to be motivated. They gotta start looking at life in a better way. You actually can become an artist if you really like compromise yourself and like putting time on it. Cause I've seen like people who used to draw pretty bad, but they start taking like classes, and then like it's actually a long way. But like after like 5-6 years, they become pretty good artists. Like, so everyone can become an artist if they really focus on it.